Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I've been moderating or speaking at a number of IG1 Global IG1 Summit events, and this is my very first time to be on a technology panel. So I'm a bit nervous, but anyhow. Yeah, let's begin. As we all know, in any industry in the world, COVID had an immense effect, positive and negatives, and education was not an exception. So today we have, especially higher education, we have 3 specialists from practitioners on the ground, and joined by Miho-san from OECD. So perhaps Miho-san, can we perhaps invite you to set a stage for us? COVID again has sort of expedited a lot of advancement, or maybe divide even over the past 2.5 years. Could you tell us a bit about statistics, what you're seeing at OECD? As a senior policy analyst in education. Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you for the invitation. And especially this topic is very relevant for many OECD countries and not limited to Japan. So first of all, I have to say the positive side, which is a lot of countries have accelerated the use of digital education due to pandemic. But I have to say the Nordic countries already have all the equipment already in place, whereas more than 80%, for example, whereas Japan has been a challenging situation. So thanks to the COVID, I have to say that there is an initiative which started before the pandemic called the GIGA School Plan has been accelerated. So before the COVID, around 50% of the schools have the access to infrastructure. But now the agenda of the GIGA School is 1 student per computer, one computer per 1 student, which is ambitious. However, it was made possible thanks to the investment, better investment in education. And you might hear often Japan invest little in education, which is supported by the OECD statistics as well. But with this, we don't have a latest statistics because it's been too early to capture those the data. However, we do see a lot of the positive effect is happening. And another important point about the acceleration of digital device in education around the world, at least in the school level, is the contradictory. The learning and well-being were combined together. Before, it was contradictory because the schools fell. We need to catch up. So we need to close the learning gaps. But the Nordic countries who already have the infrastructure in place said, well, without sense of security, sense of safety, well-being, there's no learning. So now, thanks to the COVID, now the government is realizing the learning and well-being are putting together. So those are the positive things. And apart from Japan, I have to say, I am now engaged in the support for Ukraine children around the world because of war. So not limited to pandemic, but any necessary, truthfully necessary demands in the field push the use of technology ahead. So now the Ministry of Education in Ukraine is accelerating and putting the platform in place in all around the world, wherever the Ukraine children are migrating to be able to continue the learning from Ukraine about their language, their identity, and ethical being as well, not getting trapped into this war situation. So well-being and learning and technology and societal needs. So everything is now seen holistically. Whether it is in practice or not is another question, but at least positively, the ecosystem approach to learning and well-being is gaining more traction around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hassan. It's very interesting. Obviously, COVID has limited a lot of people's mobility, and Ukraine, obviously, the war has pushed a lot of students outside of the country, and that has sort of caused a similar situation in Ukraine. Very interesting. And also, you mentioned that well-being has become sort of the center of, or not center. Well-being is now recognized as important as learning during COVID pandemic. It is a very, very interesting point that you shared. Thank you. So with that in mind, perhaps can I go to you, Alex? And you obviously lead the digital platform at GLOBIS, and I hear that you had a lot of positive impact from COVID in terms of enrollment, etc.
Yeah, so we've seen a lot of growth here. And we talk about growth. We talk about growth in kind of two terms, one being adoption, and then another being innovation as well. So we're at a panel with a lot of educators, and I'm an educator, but I'm also, by nature, we're on a technology panel. I'm an engineer, so I'll try to give a technology background to this as well a little bit, because I think that's really important. And when we talk about adoption, first of all, we saw all of our in-person MBA classes. We were able to bring them online to Zoom, and whether you like taking Zoom classes or not, how you feel about that, we were able to transform those very quickly. And we were able to do so because, I think as Miho-san pointed out, Japan has made a lot of investments in infrastructure. So the underlying infrastructure to deliver online digital experiences in Japan, it's here, it's ready. Japan has great internet. Everybody has smartphones. So the underlying infrastructure is there. So we were able to take all of the online classes, bring them, all the in-person classes, bring them online and deliver that experience in terms of adoption. But not just taking in-person classes online, but delivering new experiences for the digital era. So in addition to our online classes, we have online learning services as well. And we saw adoption for those basically double after COVID. So we had about 100,000 subscribers. We saw that jump to 200,000 after COVID. So the demand has been great. It's been fantastic to see, because of this, possibly negative trends, to see these positive actions coming out of it. But adoption is just one thing. It's one thing to get, people online, but the thing that you really need is innovation, the underlying part of that to actually build great experiences online. So in some cases, the innovation has not necessarily caught up, because I think a lot of people, like everyone in this room has probably gone to an online meeting or an online class, and maybe it hasn't gone so well at the beginning, or maybe it's getting better, but really delivering stellar online experiences from the beginning. So we're trying also at the same time to build new experiences for the online environments. And I'm actually interested to hear from Ken Ross a little bit about what Minerva is doing from this as well. Thinking about, education in 2021, 2022, what does it really look like when you think about things from the beginning? For, thinking about it for this new era, this new type of learner, is it going to change? And we're thinking about that here at GLOBIS as well. Not just bringing the in-person classes online, but thinking about how we can transform those experiences to an online native person first.
Thank you, Alex. So your enrollment surged from 100,000 to 200,000 in just 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow. And then we need to talk about innovation and student experience. Can you give us an example of how you might have done that, or are you intending to do that?
Yeah, so basically what you can do for an in-person class is you can just bring it online and Zoom. But this is not necessarily innovation in education. There's a lot of benefits to this, but it doesn't kind of transform the way that we do education. So what are the things that we're doing? We have a product called Nano MBA. And Nano MBA is basically a micro-master's program where you can earn online credits. So we're still trying to figure out the right balance of this, but combining AI online learning, combining video-based learning, and combining synchronous in-person learning, and trying to find the best way to do this and deliver the experience online is some of the initiatives and challenges that we have going forward.
So you developed basically a new platform.
New platform, and I'm coming from the software side of things. So we're, in addition to developing the content, we're developing the platform for this as well. Developing the software and developing the experiences that are driving this platform here.
Great, thank you for sharing. I think that's a good segue for Ken. Obviously, Minerva University is the front runner of when it comes to providing tertiary education in online learning. And I think Minerva was founded in 2012, so it's been a decade. Perhaps can you share us a bit about how COVID impacted your education offering, positive, negatives?
certainly. Thank you, Insan. Right. So, in a word, I think I'd probably use the word resilient to describe Minerva University and certainly our experience the past several years. As I think both of you may have, several people have alluded to, what we do at Minerva, which is essentially a blended model. All of our classes at the university are delivered, through an online medium, a virtual classroom that we actually something we created ourselves initially, starting almost a decade ago. But also, there's a physical component as well. Ours is a residential university. Students live in 7 cities around the world, and so it's, in that sense, it's not one or the other. It's not black and white. It's a bit of a mix, because again, we stepped back many years ago, before we created this institution, and said, how might we just build a better university, much more suited for our modern times, much more evidence-based and much more effective. So for that reason, but particularly because the delivery of the courses of the core academic curriculum is all online, that's meant that we've had very little disruption, almost no disruption in that respect to our academic delivery model over the past several years. We did have some, as you mentioned, disruption to our global rotation model, where there were times when our students couldn't go to Hyderabad, which is in India, which is one of our rotation cities, or where students couldn't come here to Taipei, where I am. Those, interestingly enough, of course, we're past that stage at the moment, and now all of our rotation cities are back up and running again. But the core of what we do from the academic side, on the delivery side, has been quite robust. And we believe this is important because it shows several things. One, it certainly shows that by starting with first principles of what you actually want, and if one of those first principles is a different modality in how you deliver the majority of the experience, or the majority of the curriculum, or most of the curriculum, that can prove to be more resilient. Also, something we may want to talk a little bit about more, I won't say too much about it initially, is that Minerva started by saying, again, how do we just create a better university? Part of that happened to be, we can actually use a virtual learning environment because it creates a more intimate classroom, because it allows us to track learning outcomes much better. It allows us to provide a formative feedback that's just not possible in a traditional classroom. So we did all of these things before the pandemic, pre-pandemic, and we're doing them, and we're gaining a lot of experience with them to begin with, because we started with, at least for us, which was education first principles. And I think that's very, very important to keep in mind. And we also hope, and we've actually seen as well, that this experience that people have had the past few years throughout the course of the pandemic, a lot of it, again, not very positive, has meant that it's really causing people, I think, to identify and rethink what I would argue is the proper question, which is, how might we just change at a systemic level the nature of education? We're doing so at the tertiary level, at the university level, but you could apply this to K through 12 or other levels as well. That, I think, is the main question that a lot of us should be asking, and that the pandemic has sort of driven many to ask. And I think that's a good thing.
Yeah, great, thank you, Ken. Can I ask you a follow-up question on teacher preparedness or professor preparedness?
Yeah.
Because I had a privilege of experiencing one of your classes the other day, and I was very impressed with how interactive it was, and how I think the digital platform was very different from anything that I've seen. I think obviously professors did have to go through a tremendous sort of teacher training, a professor training. Can you talk a bit about that? How you prepare professors to provide that experience?
That's a good question. It also gets to what I was just saying, because at Minerva University, we do something that pretty much no other university does. We actually train professors on how to teach. And a key element of that, and those of you who are professors out there know what I'm talking about, a key element of that, of course, is how to do so through a digital medium, through a virtual modality delivery mode. That's one element of it. But actually, a probably more core element of that teacher training, ours is several weeks long, not just a couple of days long, is actually how to teach in what we call fully active learning format. How to use all of these evidence-based teaching methods, these pedagogical tools that really we did not invent, that are not necessarily technology related. A lot of them are augmented or even enhanced by technology, but these things have been around in many cases for decades and are all part of the science of learning. That training experience that we give our professors and also some of our partner institution professors, that really is something that I would argue that perhaps every institution, no, not perhaps, definitely every institution should actually do. And, you know, we can deliver ours online through, you know, we can deliver it to a professor, even if she is on the other side of the planet, that's fine. But at the core, it's really about teaching people how to use evidence-based methods that are more effective in the classroom.
Thank you. For example, can you measure airtime of your professor versus students in classroom?
You can. That's something actually that's a heck of a lot easier to do, more effective to do when you are dealing with technology. So that's another, that's another step change question I'll just quickly, which is on a platform, at least like what we call Forum, our own classroom platform experience, which tracks, of course, teacher talk time, student talk time. A professor can do something which she is really not able to do in real time in a traditional classroom. That is, at the push of a button, she can see how much basically everybody in that classroom, and ours are all small seminars, so never more than 15 or 20 people, she can see how much everyone's been talking. And those who haven't talked as much, she doesn't need to call on. Those who are not talking as much she can actually call on. And this can actually be done in real time to affect, again, a much more active learning environment for everyone. And there are many other tools, some of them technology-based, some of them not only technology-based, but again, that could be enhanced by the technology that we actually use.
Great, thank you. So Alex, I think this is what we were talking earlier about innovation. Is this because digitalization of higher education is not just about bringing your classroom into Zoom and broadcasting it. Yeah. It's much more than that, and I think that's what Ken was alluding to. Thank you. So I'll come back to you. Don't worry. I know you're have your mic on your hand, but so Dr. Moody or Moody-san, thank you for waiting. And obviously, STC, Saudi Telecom, is the digital enabler of the entire Saudi Arabia as a nation. And you're also dean of STC Academy, where you graduated 1,000 digital leaders every year from your academy. Perhaps you can you talk to us a little bit about what Saudi Arabia went through as a nation during the pandemic in terms of education and e-learning?
Thank you. I think thank you for hosting us and discussing I would say the aftermath of the whole COVID situation. We were all surprised. We were all not prepared for such situation. But I think what helped us in Saudi is that we started a vision. We call it Vision 2030 back in 2015. And that helped us really to plan and dream big. And we invested a lot in the infrastructure, the digital infrastructure. And we started building and spreading the digital enablement through the country. So, for example, STC as a digital enabler, as you mentioned, we adapted the working from home methodology before the COVID hit us. We allow employees to work from home around 18 days a year. We've been adapting this culture from the beginning. So switching into going online was much easier for us. We were able to switch, and that would help us really to switch to the virtual life, I would say, through learning, entertaining, socializing online. At STC, we usually invest a lot in the experience of the participants for learning. We customized, we built simulations. So this was the challenge for us really, to switch and to maintain the same experience, to be virtually very similar to the physical experience. We invested a lot in understanding how can we maintain this kind of and as the panelists says, innovation was a very important element during this situation in order to think outside the box. How can we adapt to the situation? And we believe that the strength of the company or the institute who survived this pandemic is the agility that they had, the way they were able to adapt to the situation, not resisting change, and move quickly. During that, we designed all our programs to be virtually delivered. Even after the pandemic right now, we saw the value of maintaining and keeping some programs online, or even hybrid between physical delivery and virtual delivery. Previously, honestly speaking, we didn't take online learning seriously. We thought that the impact is not strong. But now I think the view into the virtual learning is different. It's acceptable. It's have the right impact. We invested a lot in building the platforms and the digital experience in order to maintain the impact and the learning outcomes that we want. Now, when it comes also to learning, as a company, we supported in providing free access for the learning platforms for the children who are taking learning. They're taking their learning course lessons from home, also distributing more than, I would say, 40,000 free internet SIM cards for the people who need it, in order to support the nation in collaboration with the digital giving initiatives by the kingdom. So we tried also to give a free access for the people who is in quarantine during the pandemic. So we tried as a private, as a kingdom, as a government to support the citizens in moving forward with this situation, and not to drop the learning and education element, because it's very, very important.
Great, thank you, Muhsin. So the reason why you distributed, did you say 40,000 SIM cards for the households who needed those digital access for education?
Yes.
Yeah, so is that, so I think, in a way, the COVID has not widened, but sort of filled a gap between, people who had access to digital education and not, who did not have access to education.
Definitely. Even we contributed in an initiative to recycle laptops and to distribute it also to whoever in need, just to support and continue learning and socializing. We know that's impacting the whole society and the whole country and the whole world as well.
Great, and this was STC initiated, not the government. I mean, you sort of, you were close.
It's in collaboration. Yeah, it's in collaboration with the government.
Great.
Definitely.
Thank you, Muhsin. So perhaps before I know we have a lot of people who might have questions. So I would like to go to questions not 15 minutes before, but 20 minutes before for the closing. But before we do that, perhaps Miho-san, could we talk about the wellness being well-being that you mentioned earlier? Because I think this is very almost not forgotten, but it is a very important aspect of children that came surface during the COVID. While digital learning is one thing, but well-being, when students are not in school, always at home, not meeting other students or even society, that did impact well-being of many young people. Do you have any statistics from OECD that shows that impact of COVID around the world or in Japan?
Yeah, actually, we do have statistics, but prior to the COVID. But we do have national reporting from many countries about the well-being part. And unfortunately, some of the systems have not collected well-being indicators rigorously. So this pandemic has given them heads up that those indicators need to be collected. And it's the same level, not only at the national or system level, but the school level. And interestingly, school level efforts more advanced than the national level. So we have a lot of reporting from school leaders that, oh yes, that now the well-being indicators are improving after the teachers become more sensitive to the well-being part, not just the teaching part. So coming back to Alex's point about adaptation and innovation, I think the teacher's readiness is not only to use the technology, but well-being mindset readiness needs to be coupled as a package to really make it happen for children. And on innovation side, once again, we hear a lot of emerging innovations of the use of innovation, such as using learning analytics and AI, and how these are not only for supporting children's learning, but actually supporting students' well-being. So learning analytics can actually follow how children are feeling or the students are feeling if the design is set right. So this is where the technology and engineers and school sector need to work together to make a product that serves the whole vision and purpose in the first place, not responding to the current demands of the labor market or the demands of the products, because then the parental decisions are overwhelming and the children's voice, the real needs will not be captured, but will be caught up by the enterprises. And also the use of data or use of big data, it's still an unknown area where the government and schools and sectors are all working together as a multi-stakeholders, because the innovations in big data is one thing, but data integrity, data governance, and tension between personal data of students and the data commons to inform the society for a better future. Those tensions are emerging.
Great. Thank you, Miho-san. Alex, earlier you had a mic in your hand, so I was wondering if you
I really liked what Ken said about evidence-based, and what Miho-san said about going out the user experience, user-focused. And it's not like these things didn't happen in education before, but now because we're crafting digital experiences, the speed with which we can make improvements and gather this kind of thing has increased so much. So previously, when you're talking about making improvements in, for example, higher education, this is a year's cycle. Gather user feedback, see what the educational outcomes are, change all the textbooks, retrain all the teachers. This takes large investments and a really long time to do. But now if we're doing everything digitally, we can speed everything up so quickly. And for example, we're using software engineering to deliver these experiences. We're using agile software development processes where we're doing every week, we set the goals using Scrum practices. So we can gather user feedback, we can look at the data, and within 1 week, we can make a tangible improvement to the students' learning outcomes. And that's just something that kind of speed and that kind of addressing the learner needs at that type of scale is just not something that was possible before we moved a lot of digital education online. So I think that this is really important, is thinking about the medium for online education as well.
Yeah, thank you. And then again, this technological innovation has to come with professor training, right? How did you do that?
So I think Miho said something else. It's the combination of engineers, software engineers, designers, plus people with domain expertise in the educational field as well. It's not something that you can do just with either one of those things. So it's about bringing together these kind of multidisciplinary approaches to tackling these problems, and that kind of collaboration is kind of where real innovation happens in the educational sector.
So, for example, at GLOBIS, you have a lot of professors or lecturers, teachers, and were they involved in your platform development?
Yes. So previously at GLOBIS, 5 years ago at GLOBIS, we had a lot of teachers, a lot of educators, and now we had a lot of software engineers and a lot of designers working here. And because we have everybody together under the same roof, we can harness that type of collaboration where we can have, the people making the content, teaching the classes, working together with the people developing the platforms, the people that are designing the platforms. And that kind of innovation together is how we're able to deliver better experiences and better learning to our outcomes to our students quicker.
Interesting. Moody, in Saudi Arabia, obviously, e-learning, you said the usage of e-learning doubled during the pandemic. Did you also see, I think the teacher training happening across the nation? Did teachers have to adapt the way they teach online? Could you talk a bit about your experience?
Definitely. I think in a corporate learning, we might have more focus on developing our trainers, because the segments that we serve is much smaller than when it goes to the bigger and wider education system. During the pandemic, I think the teacher did not have the right experience when it comes to delivering the lessons online, for the simple purpose that they used to deliver physically. It's a new way of teaching for them. So there was a lot of training happening for the teachers in order to know how to keep the students engaged, keep the content interesting. For us personally in the academy, we adapted the training methodologies, and as it's been mentioned before, I think looking at the participant experience online and physically now, it's the same important. Also, we adapted the design thinking methodologies, where we look at the full journey from the start until the end, and we look at the obstacles that we can improve during the online experience. Previously, our focus was only physical. Now we care about how they enter into the breakout rooms, how they receive the information. Is the faculty member is engaging enough online? Because this is a skill that we need to develop. So definitely there was a lot of initiatives to support the purpose of having really impactful online learning.
Thank you. Again, was that initiated by STS Academy, or is that in collaboration?
Internally, internally we did have our own faculties. We try to make sure that some courses that the person who deliver physically not necessarily can deliver online, because it's a different skills that is required. So we made sure that we have the right faculties, the right content online, and we try to develop them along the way and help them to develop these kind of skills.
Great, thank you. So lastly, before we open up the floor for questions, Miho-san, I think you earlier mentioned about teacher preparedness in Japan. Giga School was one thing. The government invested a significant amount of yen into distributing one tablet per student in primary and secondary education. And I think that usually does need to come with teacher training. Do you have any statistics or data? What is your understanding around where Japan is?
Thanks, Lynn. So again, the data is prior to the pandemic, but I have to say teachers reported, or school principals reported, that teachers are not ready to incorporate not only technological devices, but pedagogical readiness is not ready. That was the rate is lowest among the surveyed countries. But here again, we might think that Japanese teachers are humble, so they report it rather humbly by other countries. So since this is a reporting, it's not an objective, we have to cautiously take this into account. But still, the teachers did report they're not ready. So we do need to support not only with the knowledge, but teachers are human beings as well. How can we remove their fear of failure or resistance to change? So once again, we need to think about teacher training as a whole present package, not just passing on the knowledge. It's not enough. The teachers do need the well-being as well, but the companies can also help by working together. It's an ecosystem approach which is needed to find solutions. Just as Dr. Muti said, the design thinking approach is so much needed at every level.
Thank you, Miho-san. If I recall correctly, OECD statistics a few years back said that a percentage of principals in Japanese elementary schools who reported that he or she believes that their teachers are ready for technological usage was the lowest of all OECD countries. Am I right?
Yes, so this is what I said. So it's a self-reporting. So we do need to take that the rate cautiously, but it's true before the COVID. So we need to
Could you give us a number? Could you give us a number?
That was so for example, it was a 15-year-old, not the primary school, but the middle school. So around the middle school. So less than 30%.
Less than 30%.
Teachers. So, but it's the school principal's response.
Mm-hmm. Great. Let's hope that this has increased or pandemic. But I know. Yeah. So yes, I think I see a lot of eager hands, and I see digital minister as well, and some other people. So yes, let's move. Let's go to Q&A. Thank you, panelists, and let's be ready for questions. 3 each. Three at once. Yes, gentlemen. Here, 3. Yeah. Thank you.
My name is Pei Emerson from Sweden. I have a question to OECD. Have you made any studies how countries have managed to handle the COVID? Because it's different country from country. I'm running 100 schools, K-12 education in Sweden, India, Saudi Arabia, Holland, and the UK. And there are massive differences how we have been able to handle COVID due to red tape from governments.
Thank you. Second question.
My name is Yoshi Fujikawa from Hitotsubashi University Business School, and I cannot agree more on the importance of the teacher training, but it's also incentive system issue as well, that especially when it comes to higher education, that the teachers are not necessarily incentivized to upgrade and update their teaching excellence. And so what's the situation at the GLOBIS and Minerva and Saudi Arabia, and then also UWC as well?
Thank you for the very interesting insights. I'm Daniel Moraro. I'm an MBA student here at GLOBIS, actually, but also a professor at a public university in Japan. So I'm teaching nanoelectronics. So I experienced actually a fully online system of education for GLOBIS, excellently supported by the platform, but also the challenges of teaching nanoelectronics online to 100 students, a topic which should be taught hands-on. So my question is maybe for Ken and maybe for Alex as well. How do you start with first principles values in this kind of education? It shouldn't be about teaching necessarily online or on-site, but about what values should we start from and what we want to deliver to the students. Both have advantages and disadvantages, I think.
Great. Okay, so let's begin with the
sorry, we have one more question from a gentleman in the back over.
Yeah, we have 3 more, so we do three at a time, if that's okay. Yeah, because I can't remember everything. So, Pei-san's question. So you said this was for? Okay. For movie? Or?
My question was
yes.
for OECD.
Ah, okay.
If they
yeah.
have made any comparisons between countries, because it could be very good to see which methods were the best one to make sure that we got smart, better methods using COVID as a catalyst.
So Miho-san, could you take that question?
Yeah, could you repeat, please?
Sorry.
I meant that many countries have different ways to handle COVID. COVID has been a fantastic catalyst to get online education. In some countries, they have blocked it. In some countries, they have approved it. And I wonder if OECD could make comparisons that could get good examples so that many countries could realize how they could handle this in a smarter way. There are so much detailed red tape in K-12 education all over the world, not least in Canada, and not least in Japan. Yeah.
Thank you. So
Okay.
Miho-san, perhaps best practices across the country during the time of COVID.
Okay, so first of all, I have to say there is no one best example because the situation of pandemic was very different from country to country. So it would be quite premature for OECD to say this is the best example. That said, there are good principles that any good practices do have in common. So first of all, we have to see whether the best example or the good principles come at the national level or the school level. Because when we compare countries, the governance is so different. So for example, in Sweden, where maybe you are from, the school autonomy is already there, which is very different from Japan. So from that perspective, we have to really see whether as a country, whether the good example is, of course, responsiveness. To much extent, can government give autonomy to schools? if the school is ready to take all of this for a good purpose, not forgetting about, once again here, the student well-being as well. Because some of the good example in terms of catching up the learning gaps, but then in the end, students are reporting, oh, it was a torture. So what is a student success? So redefining student success is very important. And then at the school level, of course, the responsiveness, agility is one thing. How agile its school is or university is to the students' changing needs, and also where is your scope of the students' needs? It is only learning needs or the well-being needs. So as long as the scope is holistic, then there are the good practices all around the world, as well as bad examples as well.
Thank you. Great. So I think, making it visible, I think that making the data visible is a very important tool to encourage, not so enthusiastic countries like, to move forward during this time. Thank you.
Maybe Lin-san,
so I think we have a lot of hands in the room. So let's move on and we can take it offline if that's okay, Miho-san. Thank you. Great. And Yoshi-san's question about incentivization. Perhaps Alex, you can take this.
Yeah, how to incentivize teachers to want to update their skills to teach online. Well, I think we're really lucky here at GLOBIS, and I think we're lucky at Minerva as well. These are young organizations where you have teachers who come here and they want to teach and they want to get better at teaching. So I think that's part of it. It's not a stodgy university where somebody is a tenured professor who's been teaching in the classroom for 50 years and they're stuck in their traditional ways. So that's number one, but it's the attitude of the organization, and the organization needs to proactively and aggressively support. And it's not just, you send somebody out, they teach, they're good at it, but it's constantly providing that update, because teaching is changing very quickly as well as learning is changing as well. And it's constantly, from the institutional side of things, how do we support the teachers to become better teachers? How do we support them to utilize these online tools that we need in order to reach learning outcomes as well? So I think that that kind of very aggressive approach and finding ways that we can institutionally support them. And here at GLOBIS, for example, we have a team dedicated specifically to helping teachers teach, which is kind of a rare thing at some universities as well. So
you have that team in place.
We do have that team in place, and we have a lot of faculty members, not just within the team, but outside faculty members who are very involved in that as well, and who are very keen to become better teachers and support their colleagues as well to become better.
Let's say some faculty members are not performing well. Can you tell from data?
So we have a data-based approach. We have a data-based approach to student satisfaction and looking at how faculty members are performing. It's not, are you passing or failing? It's how do we support you to get better at the areas that we need, to deliver. And we've seen differences. Teachers who have traditionally been fantastic at in-person facilitation when they move online. It's not necessarily due to a lack of teaching ability.
Right.
It's simply because the tools, the methods, the ways that you teach online are very different. And it's how do we support these as GLOBIS in order to bring, their exceptional skills to the next generation online.
Great. I hope that answers your question. Thank you. And Leslie, Danielson's question, can you take this one?
I can, if I can remember the question. I'd appreciate your reminder.
So it's about the values that we should start from when we think about online or on-site teaching, rather than simply discussing the technology support. So what is the first principles approach to this? You mentioned that in your speech.
For us, I think asking is certainly the right question, and because most people ask and approach it completely wrong. The technologists are, of which I am one, I have to admit, get excited about the technology. Folks sometimes who, educators, even educators who understand the science of learning and are experts in the science of learning may not realize that there are tools out there on the technology side that can actually enhance and augment what they actually do. At least at Minerva, maybe the great innovation, and perhaps the reason why many of you may have seen Minerva was recently ranked as the most innovative university in the world by WRI and the United Nations, is because basically we have, from scratch, stepped back and said, what outcomes do we actually want? And there's a certain what and a how in terms of the what we actually teach and what students actually learn and how they actually learn, and sort of what we actually, these outcomes that we actually wanted. And then we designed everything, be it the, curricular structure and design, be it what elements of pedagogy and teaching methods we want, how we approach experiential learning and project-based learning, and of course, how we leverage technology into sort of combined into one. So whenever folks are just talking technology or just talking maybe pedagogy, you have to understand, as I think if said, that it's more of a combination of that. And I think it's that combination that we started, actually over a decade ago. And it seems like others, perhaps in GLOBIS, I'm learning a little bit today, has I think maybe in many ways, in some ways, taken Minerva's lead and also adopted of that. We'd like to see more of that. As a matter of fact, wouldn't it be great at your institution where you teach if they approach things this way?
Great, thank you, Ken. I see 2 more hands, and then there's an online question as well. Can we take those 3, please? Sorry, the one at the back. Sorry, he's been waiting. Thank you.
Okay.
I'll come to next.
Hiroshi Saito from Microsoft. We have helped quite many in terms of GIGA school program, but our experiences tell that some schools utilize very well, letting all the tools bring back home with the kids. Some others still sit on the shelves and do not utilized. So as digital minister, Kono-san emphasized importance of education, particularly in reskilling, and we are facing the matter of urgency in this country.
Yeah.
And
Can
I
you go to
hope
a question?
whether OECD could provide us or with the Japanese government more subjective data to promote our reskilling in our teachers.
Thank you. Subjective data on the schooling teachers. Thank you. Next person, yes. And Miho-san, I'll come to you for that question later on.
I don't want to sound negative, but what about the growth in myopia? I'm sorry, my name is Bill Hall from Ipsos. There's been a huge growth in myopia with young kids with all this digital education, right? So this is a fundamentally big issue, which seems to be no one's thinking about. And the second one is last week, I think it was, the Bunkacho put out a new study which showed that 90% of people are starting to forget how to write their kanji, and they can't read long sentences, right? That came out of last week's Bunkacho results, right? So these are sort of negatives. What are we doing about these sorts of topics? I think they're big issues and they seem to have been forgotten.
Thank you. Forgotten negative issues of digitalization of education. Thank you. The third question from online?
Yeah, we have one question from an online participant, Mr. Nobuaki Tanaka, that I believe is in a similar vein to the question that was just asked by the gentleman. Mr. Tanaka wants to know, does the length of content factor into the grand design of digital education? And the reason he asks is because with the proliferation of social media, with stories and reels, that people's attention span has become shorter than potentially 1 minute even. When it comes to higher education, however, you need minutes, you need hours to get a deep understanding of a topic. So to reiterate, how does the length of content fit into the grand design for digital education?
Great, thank you. So let's go to Hiroshi-san's question. Miho-san, so his question is about OECD subjective data.
Yeah, thank you. So any data we collect has to come from the government. So this is why we are encouraging the government for comparison. We have to have the same indicators to be collected for the comparison. So first, the Japanese government would need to design the indicators themselves, and then we will be collecting. But this relates to, maybe if I can already answer the second question, which was related to K-12. So Mytopia. So this is part of the physical well-being. So when the Japanese government will be collecting the data, that should be not only limited to learning, but also the well-being as well.
Do you plan on, is OECD planning on running a similar sort of survey on reskilling in the coming years or recently or in the
We
very
have
near
been
future?
already, we do actually have not only PISA for the 15-year-old, but we have PIAC for reskilling. And I have to say in the Japanese, if I look at the Japanese data, maybe if I interpret the data correctly, because of the previous the practices where the companies do provide the training, then there was less informal and non-formal learning taken up, like Sweden or Denmark, where the adults do have rigorously continue as a lifelong learning. So maybe this is an area where the government and the private sector and the individuals can actually take up seriously.
Great, thank you, Miho-san. Bill-san's question, maybe Moody, can I go to you for the second question? Obviously, digital learning comes with a lot of some negatives as well, especially in young children's learning. Is there anything that you are doing in Saudi Arabia to mitigate that?
For the young children? Is it the second question for the length of the courses?
Yes.
For the length of the contents, right?
Length of the contents is the third question, but yeah, you can answer that question if you like.
Yeah, sure. At the Academy, we have two focus. We have the professional training and the executive training. For the executive training, as you know, leaders, you can barely secure their times for 3 days for maximum or 2 days even. So if we design a course for 3 days, like from morning until afternoon or 4 p.m., and then you need to switch that content online, that is the challenge that we face. We cannot transfer the online to be as long as the physical training. The span of attention, as was mentioned, it's really, really short. We need to minimize the content. We need to minimize the length of the delivery and to keep in mind that we need to have the same impact. It was very challenging, as was mentioned in the question, the social media impact, the staying on a desk, it's not even healthy for like 6 hours. So it was very challenged. That's where we used more innovation tools, more design thinking tools in order to be able to switch and move smoothly, the same impact and the same outcomes and objectives to be achieved from physical to online. But it's not easy process to be done. It's very challenging, I have to say.
Yeah, thank you, Moody. Ken, would you like to take the second question? Your students are all online for the long time, especially when the borders are closed, they can move around the countries. Did you see, there's negative effects of internet on your students?
I'll take the second and the third question, because I think that sometimes we look at this, if not in perhaps like a zero-sum game, but we look at it a little bit too narrowly, or maybe we have our own myopia when we actually analyze the issue. Listen, there's certain things that are perhaps better done, or maybe more, that we may want to be done in a digital learning environment, but there are a heck of a lot of things, as Dr. Moody just mentioned, that are not, better done in a learning environment. We heard also before in a previous question about how do I do labs, some of the stuff I don't want to do in a digital medium. We talked about, so we have to realize that it's not either or. And that means that we can and we should, and I think, Minerva, we've set an example of, we've proposed there's one model, but there are plenty of other models that can be innovated and created and developed and adopted that will allow for people to, get up out of their seats, so often, get out there and focus on things far away. If you're worried about eyesight, this is, something where we can, if course length or length of material, which I don't think actually it should matter. I don't think there should be a conflict between putting extended type of a course material online versus having it offline, but you can actually do both. So I think we really need to think much more flexibly and broadly about what an ideal, or what are the ideal, assuming maybe there's more than one, highly beneficial, highly effective education models actually can be and should be. And we do not be limited by what currently exists or what has existed even in the past. We've seen a lot of change in the past couple of years due to the pandemic. painful instances like this drive change, we know that, but we are in the middle of it. We are in the middle of what in education, a lot of people describe as being a continuously painful period. And we're going to be in this period, I would say, for some time to come. But let's think more flexibly and more innovatively about what we actually can do and not be wedded to either a black or a white or any type of a model.
Great, thank you. And I think it's being mindful, being aware of these things would really help us, design what the.
That's a first step.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. Great, thank you. We only 4 minutes left. I can take only 2 questions. So I apologize. Sorry, I have promised you, and then maybe 30 seconds each, please. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. This has been very, very interesting. My name's Steve Zerker. I'm a dean and professor at Kansai Gaidai University. So I can still remember in February when Prime Minister Abe announced that no more in-person classes were going to occur. That was on a Friday, and I had classes on Monday. So maybe I'm bringing back some memories for some of the people in the room here. So I decided to do 50% synchronous, 50% asynchronous for classes going forward. So for Japanese, that's live, and then 50% on demand. So I'd like to get your experiences, those of you that are teaching. What have you found as the right balance in teaching digitally between asynchronous and synchronous, between live and on demand?
Thank you. Masa-san? Sorry, please go. You're closer.
Sorry, my first question is already asked, so I want to ask another question to Alex, probably. It's a very simple and straightforward question. GLOBIS has a very great platform, the virtual campus, and we really enjoy, I'm a student of GLOBIS, by the way, so I really enjoy using that software. But I think lots of traction and communication happens on the line also. So do you have any plan to integrate any messenger with the virtual campus? I think that also we have some community on Facebook, but all these are like silo platform, and there is no integration as such. So virtually, physically, we have to copy paste the comment somewhere and start a discussion. So any plan future integrating this multiple silos? Yeah, thanks.
Very specific to GLOBIS, I guess. Yeah. What's that?
Hello, my name is Yusuke Matsuda. I'm a member of the Central Educational Committee for the Ministry of Education. Our current agenda is how to digital transform teacher training. And when we think about teacher training, it's very important to think of upskill, but also how to help teachers to unlearn as well, because unlearning is scary. This might be a question to Alex or maybe Ken-san. How can we help teachers or learners to unlearn what they're used to? Is there any structure or advice for this?
Okay, great. So with 1 minute and 30 seconds left, answers need to be 30 seconds each as well. For the first question, would you like to take that?
What is the right balance? I'm going to answer this in a complete non-answer. It depends.
That really helps, right?
And there's no correct balance. It really depends on the type of activity and the objectives that you have for that type of learning, and then what is the right medium. So it's not, do you do this online or in person? It's what are you trying to accomplish, and what is the right medium for that? And I think that that's the only way to answer that question.
But that was 30 seconds. Well,
should I get the second? I'm in the lightning round right now.
Yep.
So I'm going to answer your question. It's very specific to GLOBIS, but I'm going to try to answer it in a more broad way. You ask about the social components and the community as well. Social is so important to learning because when learning is a social activity, we learn from others. And it's really, really hard to transfer that to online. It's just so difficult. It's one of the things that's missed from online. So I think that one of the challenges for institutions and educators is how to move that community and social aspect online. For GLOBIS, we do have plans to improve this as well going forward and figuring out how we can use platforms that everyone else is using to deliver those social experiences online.
Thank you. Can you take the last one? How do we teach teachers to unlearn?
A lot of spaced and deliberate practice of the new, and that would hopefully mean evidence-based methodologies that you want them to use. It's just by practicing the new methods that they're going to get off of the old methods.
Yeah. As easy said, I mean, easier
Simple
said
answer,
than done,
but that's it.
Great, thank you. That was, great, thank you. And I don't know, Mr. Minister Kono, would you like to say a few words before we close?
Thank you very much. We have deregulated online education in this country. Most of the regulations being scrapped, but really nothing is moving forward. So our digital agency will be working with the Ministry of Education. We're going to be visiting certain cities and make an example and try to create a benchmark for their online education. So we might come near you and please help us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Please consider Karuizawa. I'm just kidding, but thank you very much. We're a bit out of time, but thank you very much for a very enthusiastic participation, and the audience online. Thank you very much as well, and then a big round of applause for all the speakers and panelists. Thank you.